Are you being forced to pay taxes on money you don't even have? CBN News has a report that could save you thousands. And then, from the battery-powered car to the cardboard bicycle.
There's nowhere else in the world that has that kind of thing.
How Israelis are going green.
One of the Jewish commandments is to make the world a better place.
On today's 700 Club.
Hey, welcome. It's the 700 Club. It's a new week, and we're just very delighted to have all of you with us. Terry, a question. Guess it. Who said, quote, President Obama's foreign policy is based on fantasy? Who do you think that was? Was it Sarah Palin or Mitt Romney, or who do you think?
No, I think it was
the
board of the Washington Post. I'm on top of it today.
She's got the reader here. I'm trying to... Yeah, can you believe that? It was the editorial board of the Washington Post. The United States is trying to figure out the next move in the Ukrainian crisis. And by the way, before we get any further, who was it who said that the winner of the Oscar was going to be 12 Years a Slave?
I believe it was Pat Robertson.
Yes! You're right, twice.
On it today.
You go to the head of the class. No question about it. Yeah. Gravity didn't show. I mean, Gravity, a lot of high-tech stuff, but...
Well, it won many, many awards of its own.
I had to ask my wife's permission if I could go. It was on a Saturday or sometime. I'd gone someplace else. And I said, would you mind if I'm going to the movie tonight? And she didn't want to go. So there was one little art theater in town. Well, it didn't show.
Is that it? That's the only place
the Narrow.
it showed.
And I had to drive to the Narrow, but it was a fabulous movie.
It'll be back.
Well, I guess. Fabulous movie. So they won the Oscar. My congratulations to them.
Yes, indeed.
They didn't ask my opinion, but nevertheless, there it was. Well, the crisis in the Ukraine is simmering. Is war coming to Europe? It might. Secretary of State John Kerry is flying to Ukraine for meetings tomorrow.
Russian troops have moved into key positions in the Crimean region of Ukraine, and there are reports the soldiers have occupied airports and surrounded military bases. George Thomas brings us the story.
The area in southern Ukraine known as Crimea now belongs to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
What has already happened is a brazen act of aggression.
Within hours of the orders, Putin's forces invaded and took complete control of the Crimean airspace, airports, highways, ports, and regional government without a single shot fired yet.
We are on the brink of the disaster.
Crimea is of huge significance to Russia. The Russian Black Sea Naval Fleet is located here.
But Putin's ambitions go beyond the Crimean Peninsula. His next target could be eastern Ukraine. Over the weekend, pro-Russian demonstrators took control of key government buildings in several regions, replacing European Union flags with Russian ones, and called for union with Moscow.
We want Russia to hand out Russian passports to citizens who want them.
Ukraine accuses Moscow of orchestrating the takeover to justify an even wider invasion. 45 million people live in Ukraine. Nearly 8 million of them are ethnic Russians. Putin claims the new Ukrainian government installed after the ouster of Viktor Yanukovych is fascist and will persecute ethnic Russians. Putin says it's his job to protect them.
We want to live in peace, but we need security from Russia.
The crisis is even dividing some families.
Putin is not going to leave us alone. My sisters in Russia are offended at me and are yelling at me not to speak ill of their president. But I say to them, then your president shouldn't touch us.
For many Russians, Ukraine is viewed as part of the motherland. So when thousands of Ukrainians took to the streets 103 days ago demanding closer ties to Europe and the West, Putin wasn't too happy about it. Russia hasn't recognized the new pro-Western government in Kiev, and most experts believe Moscow will try anything to make sure it fails. This weekend, Ukraine's new but unstable government put the country on a war footing, ordering up all military reservists to active duty. This as Russian troops urge Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their weapons and pledge allegiance to Russia.
You know, this takes you back in history to the beginning of World War II, when there was an area called Sudetenland, and Adolf Hitler said, well, they're ethnic Germans. They're part of Czechoslovakia, but the Sudetendeutsch are ours, and we demand that the oppression of our people be eliminated. And of course, that's when Neville Chamberlain permitted the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia, had one of the most powerful armies in Europe, and that was disbanded. And of course, Hitler then not only rolled over Czechoslovakia, then turned and rolled over Poland. Where does Putin end? Where does his ambition end? He wants to return the glory of greater Russia. And it is obvious in the Crimea, that's a huge naval base and it's strategically important to the Russians. But nevertheless, what provocation can it be? The Ukrainians have said we want a different president. The president we had is a crook. He's been stealing money. He's been looting the Treasury. The Treasury's bankrupt, and we want to change. Well, every nation has a privilege of selecting its own leaders. That's not a reason for war. Well, George Thomas has just returned from the Crimea. George, were you afraid that maybe you might be subject to some military action, or did you get out just in time?
Pat, thank you for having me on the show. Yes, we got out just in the nick of time, and I'm actually heading tomorrow morning to Kharkov, which is about 5 hours east of Kiev. It's in the eastern province, one of the key regions in the east. I decided not to go back to Crimea because I'm getting reports from my sources on the ground that the Russian troops are in addition to trying to keep everybody else from getting into the Crimean Peninsula, they are specifically targeting journalists, in some cases confiscating their gear, their helmets, their bulletproof vests. Clearly don't want to let the world know what is going on inside. But look, Russia is in complete control of the Crimean Peninsula. The 6,000 troops, in essence, waltzed right across the border and took over within about 48 hours without one shot fired. It was so easy and lightning in.
George, it looks like the Ukrainians in an eastern part of the country really want alliance with Russia. How will the Ukrainians ever get those troops out of the Crimea?
Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult, Pat. I mean, here's the ground reality. Russia has 850,000 troops on its side of the border. Ukraine has about 130,000. Half of them are conscripts. In the Crimean Peninsula for the last 10, 15 years, there have been stationed between 15 to 20,000 Russian naval forces. They are there. There are several warships that are surrounding the Crimean Peninsula. There's absolutely no way that the Ukraine soldiers can go, and there are several military bases, incidentally, Pat, in the Crimean Peninsula that are surrounded at this very moment by Russian troops. As I mentioned in my piece, they're trying to encourage the Ukrainians to lay down their arms, and in some cases, at some military bases, they say, in exchange for laying down your arms, we will give you a beautiful minted Russian passport.
What can the U.S. do? Have you talked to anybody over there that has any solutions?
Look, John Kerry, U.S. Secretary John Kerry is flying in tomorrow on a surprise visit. Clearly, this is a playbook that Vladimir Putin has had organized for quite some time, way before the Sochi Olympic Games, and I mean, this is something that he was planning well ahead of time. NATO, EU, the United States cannot do anything at the moment. I mean, the least they can do is try to shore up the economic foundation of this country. Remember, Pat, this is an interim government just elected last week, very, very unstable, very weak, and doesn't have the support in the eastern part of the country. You know, you saw those demonstrations, and that's why I'm heading there tomorrow. Thousands of pro-Russian demonstrators. They've gone into key government buildings and they've replaced the flags of the European Union with the Russian flag. I mean, there is the anger toward this interim government is very, very real. And while I was in Sevastopol late last week, the anti-American sentiment, as you can imagine, because this is a predominantly pro-Russian city, the anti-American sentiment is extremely high. They blame Russia for orchestrating the revolution in Kiev, and they say, listen, we don't trust this interim government. We feel like we're going to persecute ethnic Russians, and we welcome Russia to come and help us.
George, stay safe. Let us hear from you. We appreciate so much you being there on the ground. It's very important. But ladies and gentlemen, the foreign policy of our government, according to the Washington Post, is fantasy, and it is fantasy. They have no interim plan. And there was a debate, in the last presidential election. Mitt Romney said there's a danger that the Russians will invade the Ukraine. Sarah Palin, interestingly enough, said the same thing in a op-ed piece, that this was a serious danger, and lo and behold, the danger is taking place. Why did the Russians do it? Because we didn't act in Syria. We were so weak in Syria, and Putin said, I could go in there with impunity. But the Crimea was a place of brutal battle. The Crimean War was a black eye to Great Britain, and that's where you had Florence Nightingale as where the charge of the Light Brigade and things like that. It's a brutal place, but it has been under Russian control. Well, we'll keep an eye on it, but keep in mind, like it or not, Russia has a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons. We talk about Iran and we talk about North Korea, but they can't hold a candle to what Russia's got. And we were hoping that we could have a reset of relations with Russia and we could be living at peace and friendship. But Vladimir Putin is a KGB operative, and he wants hegemony, and he wants power, and he wants money, and he looks like he's getting them all. And he recognizes in the United States we have weak leadership and a divided country, and he's going to do whatever he wants to now while the game is open. Well, back here at home, 100 million Americans are facing a massive mid-Atlantic winter storm today. It's already canceled 2,000 flights and prompted New Jersey to declare a state of emergency. We have two reports on that weather situation from CBN News, beginning with our reporter, Heather Sells.
The country's midsection has already taken a beating. On Sunday, freezing rain and heavy snow pelted many central and eastern states. Crews have struggled to de-ice plains and clear roads. In Oklahoma, ice caused a 40-car pileup.
I threw it in four-wheel drive, and even with four-wheel drive, I was spinning.
Forecasters say today's latest blast of winter will hit the mid-Atlantic with anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of snow. Cities have tried to prepare. Baltimore brought in 20,000 tons of salt, and the power company warned customers to brace for outages.
We do have crews, an increased number of crews stationed throughout the entire service territory.
Thousands in Arkansas and Tennessee are already without power, and school children in multiple states from Texas to Pennsylvania will stay home today, all thanks to our latest winter weather.
This is Paul Strand in Washington. Officials have declared a state of emergency and federal offices are closed here in the nation's capital. But this time the government shutdown isn't the politicians' fault. Blame the second major snowstorm in a month. Overnight, a sort of icy sleet fell, and now 4 to 10 inches of snow are expected to seal that wet, heavy stuff to power lines and trees. Add in heavy winds, and that could lead to lots of accidents and power outages. Area airports have canceled some 300 flights, so if you are here, you're likely stuck here. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
It's amazing. The Republicans didn't have anything to do with shutting the government down. Yeah, how about that?
Shocker.
I think the Lord doesn't want that government open. Let's hope he's on our side.
And he's able.
Anyhow, we're in Virginia Beach. So far, the weather has been rather benign. It's about 37 degrees, and they think that the stuff is going to hit us this afternoon. So the schools are closed in most of the big areas around here, but the reason is that these drivers don't want to drive those school buses loaded with children in these slick conditions. It only takes about a ½ inch of ice on the roads, and at that point, they are impassable. So Rather than bring the children in and then run the risk of having accidents on the way home, they just closed the schools. So the major school systems are shut in our area, and the school children are having a day off, but it's not the kind of thing where they can build up snowmen. No. Terry?
Well, up next, you could owe the IRS more than you know if you filed bankruptcy or had a foreclosure last year. Tax expert Dan Pila is in the house, and he'll show you how to eliminate those taxes after this.
Start planning your journey to the Holy Land. Come to Jerusalem. Breathe the air Jesus breathed that very night in the Garden of Gethsemane. Walk in his footsteps to Golgotha. Step inside the tomb. See the stone where his body lay. Glory to God, he is risen. Ask your pastor or visit goisrael.com to learn more about making the journey that will transform your faith in God and his word. Experience Israel. You'll never be the same.
So with Vonage Home Phone Service, you get unlimited calling in the U.S. and to over 60 countries from this phone and from this phone.
On my home phone and my mobile phone?
One calling plan, 2 phones.
Esto y esto?
Sí, y sí.
Really? 2 phones?
One low monthly rate, you got it.
On this phone.
And this one?
Yes, and pretend yes. Go to Vonage.com and get 1 calling plan for both of your phones.
That's crazy.
Crazy generous.
Tuesday, is America splitting apart?
We're at this point of irreconcilable differences.
Here's what's behind the secession movement.
People want government to stay out of their business.
Plus,
that was suffocating.
Trapped between 2 cars.
It looked pretty bad.
A cry for help.
All these things that can go through your mind in a matter of moments.
And a supernatural answer.
If I don't end up coming back, I know where I'm going.
On the 700 Club.
Last few years, many bad things have been happening in real estate. You have foreclosures, you have all kinds of short sales, you have all kinds of things happening. You have people going into bankruptcy, and you think, well, after I've done that, or I've lost my home, surely that's the end. Well, the answer is it's not the end. There are worse things that could happen, because your friends at the IRS could show up and say, oh, by the way, you owe a lot more. Watch this.
It's bad enough to lose your home to foreclosure, or to have your car repossessed, or to be forced to file for bankruptcy. But as awful as those things are, your financial nightmare could get even worse when the IRS shows up and slaps you with a Form 1099-C. A 1099-C is a tax form that says that you actually received income when your debt was forgiven. So on top of all the other bad news, the IRS expects you to pay taxes on non-existent income, turning a difficult financial situation into an impossible one. Tax expert Dan Pila says you don't have to add insult to injury, and you don't have to pay taxes on canceled debt. His new book and DVD are called How to Eliminate Taxes on Debt Forgiveness. It's a step-by-step guide to show you how to avoid paying taxes on canceled debt.
Well, here's the book. It's got a pretty color, red, white, and blue. Looks like the American flag. How to Eliminate Taxes on Debt Forgiveness. Our friend Dan Pilla is here with us again. Dan, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you, Pat. How you doing?
All right. You talk about the 1099-C, which is a notice that you have received income. It goes out that income has come to you from some source other than your earnings. How many of those things have gone out?
Well, Pat, since 2008, when America started in this financial downturn that we've had, there have been at least 5 million a year that have gone out. And this is a result of bankruptcies and foreclosures and short sales, these things you listed out at the top of the segment here. 5 million taxpayers a year are dealing with this phantom income, where the IRS comes along and says, okay, you've had this debt forgiven now. A difficult financial situation turns into an impossible one when the IRS wants taxes on this money.
I've lost my home. I've lost everything. The bank's taken it away in foreclosure. And somehow because a debt has been written off, they say I've got an income?
Yeah, that's right. It's right. It's exactly right. Let me put it in the context of a credit card, all right? This is a real easy to understand when we're talking about a credit card. Let's say you get a credit card, you run up $10,000 worth of debt on a credit card.
Right.
All right, when you take that money off the credit card and spend it, that is not considered income to you at that time. Right. That's a loan. Loans aren't treated as income.
Right.
All right, when you pay back the loan, you don't get a tax deduction for that, maybe the interest, but that depends. All right, so now you've run up $10,000 worth of credit card debt and you don't pay it back. Let's say it's forgiven in bankruptcy or you negotiate with the credit card company. Now what happens is you've gotten $10,000 worth of loan proceeds, but you never had to pay them back. So the IRS takes the position that the character of the transaction changes from that of loan to that of income. And now they want tax on the forgiven debt.
Even though you're in bankruptcy?
Even though, well, you may be in bankruptcy. It could be the worst possible time of your life. And as a matter of fact, for people going through this, Pat, it is the worst possible time of their life.
That's horrible. Well, I mean, you're on the floor, you're gasping for breath, and they put their foot on your neck and try to squeeze.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, and that's what happens. But here's what people need to know. This is what the good news is, right? And this is what I talk about in the book, How to Eliminate Taxes on Debt Forgiveness Income. There are so many exceptions to this rule, Pat, that virtually everybody who's going through this situation is not going to owe the tax if they understand how to present the exception. Of course, the IRS doesn't tell you what the exceptions are. The creditors don't tell you that. They just mail out the 1099 because the IRS will penalize them if they don't. So you as the taxpayer have to know what the exceptions are.
Give me one or two happy exceptions.
All right, well, let me give you the one that applies almost across the board.
Okay.
All right, the rule is if you are insolvent, as of the day the debt is forgiven, then that cancellation of debt is not taxable income. Now, the definition of insolvency is very simple. If the sum of all of your debts exceeds the value of your assets, then you're insolvent. So, for example, if your only asset, let's simplify this, if your only asset's a $5,000 car and you have $10,000 worth of credit card debt, you're insolvent by $5,000. So if the credit card debt is forgiven, then you are not taxed to the extent of that insolvency. Now, Pat, people who are flat on their back financially, most of these people are insolvent.
Sure, of
all
course.
right, and in the book, I show you how to do what's called an insolvency calculation, where I take you step by step through the process of figuring out what the value of your assets are and how to calculate your debt. And then, more importantly, how to present that to the IRS so you don't have to pay tax.
You don't get that stuff automatically. You're right.
No,
you've got to make the case.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. None of this applies automatically. You have to demonstrate it to the IRS. And as a matter of fact, there's a tax form that people don't know about that you can put with your tax return. So if you get one of these 1099-Cs, as millions of people will do here, or already have here for this filing season, there's a form you can put with your tax return that expresses what these exceptions are so that you don't get taxed on it.
Dan, this is going to be very helpful. Where do people get this book?
This book is available from the CNN website, the CBN website, cbn.com.
Okay.
So just go to cbn.com and then there's a link there to order the material.
It's called How to Eliminate Taxes on Debt Forgiveness. Boy, you need all the help you can get, and I appreciate Dan for this very helpful reminder. It's an easy-to-read booklet, and you can learn the secrets. You need the secrets. It shouldn't be all this hidden, but do you think are they ever going to reform that monstrous code?
Well, let's hope so. I'm working for it.
Are you?
I'm working for it. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work.
That won't put guys like you out of business, will it?
Well, I'll have to get a job selling shoes, Pat, but that's okay.
Dan, thanks so much. Dan Fellow, ladies and gentlemen. Look, how to eliminate taxes on debt forgiveness, and you can just link on to cbn.com and see how to get it. It's not for free, but they'll tell you how to pay for it. All right, Terry, what's next?
Well, up next, a 14-year-old girl is sex trafficked by her own aunt.
This is what she programmed in my mind. So the money was more important. I wanted to change. I did. But I was so lost in my pain and in that life that I didn't think I could.
See how she found a way out and a way to help others like her escape.
Hi, I'm Wayne Allen Root, former presidential candidate, conservative national media personality, best-selling author, and true blue patriot. I call what we're living in today the Great Depression 2. More Americans now receive government entitlements than work full-time. The typical family earns less today than in 1989. I understand exactly what's happening to this economy and how you can protect yourself. So I sat down and taped a 30-minute DVD on the topic with all the critical steps needed to ensure Americans can both survive and thrive in 2014. It's called The Timeless Truth About Money. And it's only available in this special TV offer by calling the number below or by visiting online. Thanks to Swiss America, you'll finally understand the true goal of Obamacare, how our trillions in debt will sink the economy, and most importantly, why your golden years require a whole new golden strategy. Call now.
I was having some pains between my shoulder blades. At that point, everything changed. Diagnosis, pancreatic cancer. First, there was prayer. The second is to fight. As soon as we walked through those doors at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, all my anxiety left. The pastoral care here is based on the Bible, based on the Word of God, just as it is at our own church.
When you combine the great medicine with the spiritual resources we have, it provides the patients with something that really can make a difference.
You got a pastor right there on staff praying with patients, whether it be scripture or whether it just be a word of encouragement to say, God's got this.
If you or someone you love is fighting complex or advanced stage cancer, go to cancercenter.com/faith. You'll learn how our treatment results compare to national averages and see a list of insurance plans with which we've worked. Advanced medicine and technology, the warm embrace of the Spirit.
I firmly believe God led me here.
Call or go to cancercenter.com. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits. Appointments available now.
Your sweet 14-year-old daughter is in a mall with her friends. They're having a lot of fun together. And suddenly a shadowy-looking guy comes up and hits her in the arm with a hypodermic needle, just a pinprick. And suddenly she goes limp. The man takes her and says to everybody, well, this is my niece. I've got to take her to a doctor. They take her out, throw her in a car, and she's gone. What is she? She has become a sex slave, and she's part of sex trafficking. Now, what do you think? That's what you have in your mind. But what would happen if the pimp was not some shadowing Eastern European gangster, but a member of that girl's family? Well, we're going to show you somebody that had that done to them.
He told me that he would be back, and he got in the car, and I was standing on the porch, and he left, and he never came back. It hurt me very badly.
6-year-old Karen Green was devastated when her parents divorced and she discovered her dad would no longer be in her life.
I felt abandoned. I felt rejected. I often ask myself, why?
Karen became friends with a man who lived nearby. She went to his house often, and soon he started fondling her. Karen didn't try to stop him.
I was hungry for any affection from a man that I was willing to do it.
When Karen got older, she realized the touching was wrong and was glad when the man moved. Then her mother's boyfriend moved in, and he tried touching her too. Karen resisted and told her mother, but her mom accused Karen of leading him on and sent her to live with an aunt.
I felt like there was something wrong with me, from my mom to just throw me out.
Karen soon gained the affection of many men when her aunt started setting her up on dates with older men. She told her if she slept with them, they would give her money. She also told Karen when she came home to hand the money over. Karen was just 14.
This is what she programmed in my mind, So the money was more important. Surviving was more important.
Karen saw no way out. She started using the drugs the men gave her.
It was my way of escaping the reality of what was really happening in my life.
At 18, she left her aunts, living in shelters, turning tricks, and doing drugs.
And it was a cycle. I couldn't stop. It's like this has taken full control.
One day, Karen got caught in the middle of a drug deal that went bad.
And at that moment, I knew I had to do something. If they would have found me, they would have killed me. I wanted to change. I did. But I was so lost in my pain and in that life that I didn't think I could.
Karen checked into a year-long drug treatment program.
I really began to see myself. And the first thing I see was that little girl standing on the porch, waiting on her daddy to come back. I had so many issues. Abandonment, rejection, pain.
One day, Karen went to a chapel service at the facility.
Oh, at that moment, I knew God was the answer. He had to take me out of the elements of what I knew and what I thought about and bring me to the point where I could experience Him and know that He was the answer. In that moment, I surrendered and I accepted Christ in my heart and I gave my life to God.
Karen met with Christian counselors and read her Bible every day. She realized she needed to ask God for forgiveness and own up to her mistakes.
And I said, teach me how to be accountable. Teach me what it is to be responsible. Teach me. And God did that.
Today, Karen is drug-free and runs an outreach dedicated to helping young women caught in the web of prostitution and substance abuse.
Because of Jesus, I have a reason to live today and live the abundance and His joy and His peace and His love. It's nothing like being loved by God.
I wanted out. I wanted out. I wanted out, but the pain was too great. I wanted out, but I was afraid. I wanted out. How many of you have said something like this? I don't believe I can do it. I haven't got the strength to kick the habit. I don't think I can get out. I want out, but I can't do it. Okay, we'll buy that. But Jesus Christ said, listen, I know you don't have the strength, and I'll give you strength if you just ask me, if you'll let me do it. If you'll open your heart to me and let me take over, I'll give you the strength. Do you want out? Is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Is it promiscuous sex? Is it pornography? Is it hatred and violence? What is it that grabs you? I mean, you know, these things are common. There's nothing taking you, but such is common to man. But God's faithful, who will with the temptation make a way of escape. He'll make a way of escape for you if you let Him. Now, do you want out? I'll ask you again, do you want out? And if your answer is yes, then let's take the hand of Jesus Christ and let Him take you out. Will you surrender to Him right now? If you do, He'll get you free. Pray these words. Do it. Jesus, that's right, say it. Jesus, you know me, Lord. You know how weak I am. You know how I have been abused. You know the stuff that I've done to myself. You know what I've done to others. You know the temptation that is so close at hand. Jesus, I want out. But I've got to have help. And I ask you to come right now, reform me, change me, make me into a new creature. I surrender to you completely. And I ask you, take my life. I receive you as Savior and make you my Lord. Thank you, Lord, for hearing my prayer. Thank you, Lord, for coming into my heart. Now, if you prayed with me just then, I have something I want to give you. I want you to get started. That's just the beginning, and there's the whole adventure ahead of you. And I want to give you something called a new day. I'll give it to you free. It's got a little compact disc in here, 73 minutes of very important teaching, and a little booklet about the Scriptures. I'll give this to you free. No financial obligation. Toll-free numbers, 1-800-759-0700. Just take your telephone, punch up those numbers, 1-800-759-0700. Somebody's there who cares about you. Just say, look, I prayed with Pat, I've given my heart to the Lord, and I believe right now that God is taking me out. I'm going to be free. I am free in the Lord. I receive His freedom. Call right now. And if you need further prayer, somebody's here for you. Here's Terry.
Still ahead, Israelis were green long before it was cool. And today, they're world leaders in energy conservation.
90% of Israeli homes have a solar water heater. There's nowhere else in the world that has that kind of thing.
Stay tuned to see some amazing energy-saving innovations, all made in Israel.
I always wore a mask. I would never let anyone see what I really felt inside. My whole life, all I wanted to hear was that I love you and I want you. I just realized all of the horrible things that I've done in the past to feel loved and accepted. They were fleeting, it didn't matter. The relationship that I wanted my whole life was right there for me, and it was Jesus.
Imagine the indescribable joy of winning $7,000 a week for life. That's right. Now you can win $7,000 every week for the rest of your life. With the new Set for Life prize from Publishers Clearinghouse. $7,000 a week after week for life. Watch your mail or go to pch.com and enter. April 30th, you could win $7,000 a week for life.
With Basic Talk home phone service, you can make unlimited, crystal clear domestic calls for just $9.99 a month, every month. But if you don't believe me, listen to this trustworthy grandfather.
Yep. Basic Talk, just $9.99 a month. Call, click, or go to Walmart today.
Welcome back to Washington for this CBN News break. The Christian film Son of God had a strong box office opening this weekend, bringing in $26.5 million to finish a close second behind the airline thriller Non-Stop. Analysts say with numbers like these, Hollywood is bound to make more religious-based films. CBN's India ministry received the 2014 National Religious Broadcasters Media Award for International Innovation. The award is presented to an organization outside the U.S. that excels in the innovative use of electronic media to proclaim the gospel. CBN's program Shamadan, which means Solutions, airs every Sunday morning on ETV Bengal, one of the most popular Bengali channels.
The people who call are from Muslim background, from Hindu background, and most of them are very, very religious about it. So it's not easy for us to evangelize them on a person-to-person basis, but Samadhan is an answer for reaching out to these people in this dark area.
The program addresses various issues through testimonies and ministry segments to reach millions of Bengali speakers in India and in Bangladesh. Well, you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by going to cbn.com/international. Pat and Terry will be back right after this.
Look at this amazing before and after. See why every year Lifestyle Lift wins. Over 6 million individuals just like you have already called. These people are real, the photos untouched. Imagine what a Lifestyle Lift will do for you. Learn how easy it is today. Like the millions before you, call for your free gift pack because we are the nation's #1 choice for people like you who want to look and feel younger. Their stories began like yours with an easy free phone call because like you, they cared about not looking old anymore. They look amazing, youthful, and energetic. Join countless others like you. Call today because we have a special gift just for you. Our free gift pack filled with invaluable information. Call 1-800-493-3762. No credit card needed. And when you call today, you'll receive your gift pack fast because as a free bonus, we'll expedite it. And you'll get a coupon for your facial analysis. See your new look, a $300 value free. So call 1-800-493-3762 now.
More than any other figure in history, Jesus of Nazareth has had a profound impact on our world. Join thousands of others for free, world-class online courses available now through Lux Vera from Regent University. Explore the divine authority of the New Testament and the reliability of ancient texts. Understand his life and ministry. Consider the identity, relevance, and challenge of Jesus for the 21st century. Who is Jesus? Uncover truth now at luxvera.regent.edu.
Come to the Holy Land and walk in the footsteps of Jesus. From Nazareth to the birthplace of his ministry, the shores of Galilee. Stand where he stood. Be baptized in the Jordan River. Hallelujah, he is everlasting. Ask your pastor or visit goisrael.com to learn more about making the journey that will transform your faith in God and his word. Experience Israel. You'll never be the same.
Saving the environment is a popular cause today, but Israelis have been going green since before they were even a state. This story looks at a few of the environment-saving ideas that Israelis have either invented or improved upon, such as reforestation, solar energy, and the battery-powered car.
To many people, Israel is a place of Bible stories and ancient ruins.
In hundreds of archaeological digs like this one, Israelis are carefully preserving their past, but they're also keeping an eye on the future. And not just their future, the future of the world.
One of the Jewish commandments is tikkun olam, which means, translation to English, is to repair the world under God, to make the world a better place.
I see a direct correlation between our belief in tikkun olam and this incredible explosion of activity and innovation in Startup Nation.
Today, the world is focused on saving the environment, but Israelis were green long before it was popular, about a century before.
It's part of the Zionism dream to create a green land, a green country, and actually with time, with experience and research, we have studied how to do it.
The prophet Isaiah wrote about a time when the desert would rejoice and blossom as a rose. To Israelis, that's more than an ancient prophecy. It's a commandment.
Israel is a tiny state. Look at a map of our region. We use always to joke, there's not even enough place on the map to write the name of Israel. So we had to conserve it, to keep it, to maintain it. This is what we have.
To the early settlers in Israel, going green meant planting trees. And they started in the Negev desert, a place that gets only 1 to 7 inches of rain a year. In the 1940s, Jerusalem was still under Arab control, and Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, believed that the Negev was the future of Israel. So he ordered the creation of a man-made forest there. But his team of scientists said it couldn't be done. Ben-Gurion's response? No problem. We'll get new scientists. The prime minister got his new scientists, and the Negev desert began to blossom. Today, the Yatir forest has more than 4 million trees, including carob, pine, olive, and fig.
Israel is amongst the fewest countries in the world that at the end of the 20th century, there are much more trees than were at the beginning of this century. Till now, we have planted over 240 million trees, which is a nice number to this small country.
In the center of the forest is a vineyard, planted on the ruins of another one that existed here 2,000 years ago. Scientists researched the best plants to grow in the Negev And one of their sources was the Bible.
There are plenty of archaeological ruins everywhere. Water cisterns, dams, terraces, everywhere. And we have started with reconstruction of some of these ancient farms. We have planted biblical trees, and the trees are surviving without additional irrigation by collecting runoff water, the same cisterns that our forefathers did 2,000 years ago.
The trees not only produce fruit, they also clean the environment by absorbing carbon dioxide. Studies show that planting similar forest on just 12% of the world's arid land would reduce carbon in the atmosphere by a gigaton a year. That's equal to the carbon output of 1,000 coal plants. Today, scientists from around the world come to Israel to study the Yatir forest.
We like to serve. We are proud to serve all our achievements to other countries. And of course, we want to share our knowledge and study from other countries' experience.
Israelis are not only working to protect the environment, they're also looking for new ways to keep the country running without oil.
Israel itself, it's a beautiful country, a country definitely worth visiting with tremendous, lush, interesting areas, but we don't have the traditional gold mines and massive oil and diamonds. We basically have a country of human resources rather than natural resources. So we very much value what little we have.
Israel may be short on oil, but it does have one natural resource that's virtually unlimited.
Israel's greatest natural resource, sun.
We do have a lot of sun here. It's a hot place, so we produce solar energy.
For much of the year, the sun beats down on a land that's mostly desert. But what some might see as a liability, Israel has turned into an advantage. Israelis have been using rooftop solar panels since the 1950s, when they were still unheard of in the rest of the world.
90% of Israeli homes have a solar water heater. There's nowhere else in the world that has that kind of thing.
In 2011, Israel's first commercial solar field was completed in the southern Arava Valley. The company, Arava Power, now has 9 other fields under construction and plans for 40 more energy projects in Israel over the next 3 years. Their goal is to supply 1/10 of Israel's power. The company's founders are now building solar fields in several third-world countries, like Haiti, Ecuador, and Rwanda. The solar field in Rwanda should be up and running by the end of 2013 and will provide 8% of Rwanda's energy.
Israel has been a leader in clean technology from the beginning. Part of it also is that our neighbors have had a lot of oil and have sort of corrupted the world economic system and the world political system and used it unfairly to impose, I think, sometimes harmful ideologies. And therefore, if Israel can fight the world dependence on oil, what would be a better thing than that?
In 2005, an Israeli software developer named Shai Agassi heard a similar question at a conference.
We were asked, how are you going to make the world a better place?
Agassi's answer, take a single country off oil, then the rest of the world will follow. The first step was to assemble a fleet of cars that could run without oil. So Agassi started a company called Better Place, which offered an electric battery-powered car. The car battery recharges overnight in special power outlets installed in the owner's home. And for longer trips, drivers can switch out the car's battery at stations all over Israel. The entire process takes less than 5 minutes. I hear these go fast.
They're quite fast, so you have no gearbox.
Why is it so fast?
What you'll feel on the acceleration is full maximum torque. There's no gears, there's just literally drive, neutral, and reverse.
0 to 60 in how many seconds?
About 6.9, I believe.
Really? Well, maybe I can wipe out my cameraman as I go by. As a consumer, one of the things that is really appealing to me is the absolute quiet.
The goal with this car was to make a car and then network that can support it, that appeals to everyone. You don't have to be a greenie to say, I want this car. You can say, I like it because it's fast, it has great power and acceleration, and I can fit my entire family in it.
That was fun. Unfortunately, public demand for electric cars hasn't caught up with the vision of Better Place, and the company filed for bankruptcy in May of 2013. But some experts say timing is everything, and the battery-powered car will ride again. In the meantime, Israelis have another option that's just as green, and thousands of dollars cheaper. In 2008, an avid biker named Azar Gaffney had an idea.
Suddenly it just struck my mind. Why not to make a bicycle out of cardboard? Soon after, I talked to 3 engineers, which I really highly appreciate, and they said, it's impossible. There's no way it can be done. While I was eating with my wife one day, she noticed that I'm a little bit disturbed. I told her all the things about the engineers I went to and all the things that they said about it's impossible. And then she looked at me. And then she said, I know you. If you're not going to try it, then you're going to drive yourself crazy. Then you're going to drive me crazy. Then you're going to drive the entire family crazy. So just go ahead and try it.
4 years and 6 prototypes later, the cardboard bicycle was ready to ride. The finished bike weighs in at just 20 pounds, and yet it can hold a 500-pound rider. And unlike regular cardboard, it's completely waterproof. Mass production on the bike will start in late 2013. It'll cost about $9 to make and sell for around $60.
Where do you get this from? What right do you have to dream that way? We're people of dreams. It's all through the Bible. That's always been our methodology, if you will, in the Jewish people. God gives us dreams. It's for man to interpret them and man to experience them, and that's really the roots, I think, of much of our innovation. The fact that we're so flourishing here is a sign that this was God's will, that this is what was supposed to happen. This is the plan. We're good people. We're family-oriented people. We have an incredible army and society. I think that we have just begun to figure out that we have to tell our story about who we are rather than engage in constant bickering over the Middle East conflict. We have to go convey what the beauty of Israel is.
Fascinating. I'll bet you didn't know some of those creative ideas came to the world through Israel. And on Wednesday, we're going to show you the latest innovations from Israel in the world of medicine. We want you to know you can find out more by going to our special section on CBN.com. Take a look. I think you'll be amazed.
Sounds like Gordon's ready to move. I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, the Israel Tourist Office did not pay for those. It's spontaneous from CBN because we love that country. All right, what's next?
Okay, it's time to bring it on with some questions from our viewers. Pat, this first one is from Judy, who says, what's the deal with soul sleep? If someone dies who isn't a Christian, do they have to wait until Judgment Day for the final verdict of their life?
If you read what Jesus had to say about the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man, Lazarus died and it was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man died and woke up in hell where there was a torment, and he asked, please have him touch his finger, give me a drop of water because I'm tormented by this flame. So he was suffering immediately. And so that's the way Jesus presented it when they died. Nothing about any soul sleep. I mean, you're either, he said, this day you'll be with me in paradise. Rich man, you know,
immediately
wound up in hell. All right.
This is Anne who says, the Bible told the Hebrews not to marry non-Hebrews, yet Moses married an Egyptian, Joseph married an Egyptian, even Abraham married again after Sarah died. Were these men of faith violating God's commandment? And if so, why do we still revere them?
Well, the commandments that you're referring to didn't take place till they were codified on the Mosaic Law, and by then all those other things had happened. You're talking about people that predated the law, and those strictures applied to the Jewish people, indeed, but Moses didn't. And, you know, if you look at the background, the genealogy of Jesus himself, there are a number of Gentile women who show up in his background. You know, the harlot Rahab, for example, she was a Gentile, but she's in his background. And so I think it shows that Jesus was a uniter of Jews and Gentiles.
Okay, this is Eleanor who says, it seems to me like the closer I walk with God, bad things happen more often. I lost my job. I feel as if I'm losing my husband. I thought everything was supposed to be okay. Can you help me to understand?
You know, I've ridden in an airplane, the Concorde, that goes through the sound barrier. And when it gets to the sound barrier, it bumps. In the old days, they thought those planes were going to shake apart. They'd come to the sound barrier and they'd start shaking violently. And then they'd go through and then it was quiet. I mean, it's the most beautiful quiet because you're ahead of sound and it's beautiful. There's a turbulent period when you come to the Lord, when you're breaking out of selfishness, satanic activity, whatever you're doing, and move in to the spiritual life of the Lord. And at that point, there is a shaking. Whenever an athlete goes through some new experience, through whatever experience it is, but they're going to a new level of fitness, there's an awful, awful anguish in their bodies until they break through. So, you know, I just say that's what happens when you come to the Lord. The closer you get into the Lord, until you finally make that transition, rest in Him.
Okay,
Right.
This is Mark who says, Jesus said that they who are in their graves will rise first to meet him. What happens if you're cremated?
I mean, you've had it. I'm sorry.
A gasp just let out.
Too bad. You're in the sea and it's too bad. No, I'm being facetious, but what happens is your spirit lives on. Whatever happens to your body, it's gone. But the recreated body will join with your spirit by action of the Lord, and it has nothing to do with the way you're buried. All right.
Okay, this is Victoria who says, I've been married to my second husband for 30 years. We have a beautiful family together. Lately, I've been feeling others criticize me because of my first marriage, which I left because my husband was abusing me. Someone called me an adulteress because I married someone else, saying that the only biblical grounds for divorce is infidelity. Is this true? Would God have wanted me to stay with the man who was hurting me?
You've been married for 30 years. What kind of a church are you going to with people pulling that stuff on you? I mean, that really is just horrible. Now, look, the Pauline privilege, and I say this is true, if the unbeliever is pleased to depart, let him depart. The brother or sister is not bound in that case. All right. Now, what if a man is so abusive that it's impossible to live with him? What if he actually beats you? What if he abuses you so badly you're losing your mind? People do that. There's torture in marriages. You don't have to stay in that kind of an abusive relationship. If the unbeliever makes it impossible to I call that constructive desertion, and I think it comes under the Pauline privilege. But if you've been married happily for 30 years, I mean, praise the Lord for His goodness, and don't listen to these carping old harpies. Whoever's doing it, I just can't believe it. Well, we leave you with today's Power Minute from Psalm 145. The Lord is near to all who call upon Him. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear Him. He also will hear their cry and save them. The Lord preserves all who love Him. Well, thank you so much for being with us. For Terry and all of us, this is Pat Robertson, and we will see you tomorrow on the 700 Club. Don't miss it.
Many mornings, Bot went to school hungry.
I asked my parents for money to buy lunch at school, but they didn't have any. I prayed that God would give us food to eat.
That's when Orphans Promise invited Bott to a nearby church, where we gave him hot, nutritious meals and supplies for school. We also taught Bott about the love of Jesus, and soon after, his parents began to pray to Jesus too.
Thanks, CBN, for helping my family to know God and for everything.
These are the things you make possible when you partner with CBN. Thousands of people around the world begin new lives because you cared enough to give. To those of you who recently pledged to join the 700 Club, thank you. Your help will make a tremendous difference in so many lives. Be sure to watch for this mailing and remember to send in your pledge, because when we all come together to help, miracles happen.